All right, we're on. Folks, I am joined by Superman Todd, an account that I've been following on TikTok for a while. I don't remember when I first followed his account, but I've always enjoyed his content. And like with everybody else, I'm always happy whenever I see someone who I'm following follows me as well. And so, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate the opportunity.
Good stuff. So I do like asking about usernames. How did you come up with the name Superman Todd? Like, where did that?
I got a nickname. The nickname Superman many years ago. I was much more of a impressive physical specimen in my
ah
early to mid 20s, and
ah.
there was somebody who was one of my people I looked up to who I slayed some sort of physical event of some sort, and he said, "Man, you're Superman," and it just kind of stuck from there. I don't really live up to that name anymore, but always been a nickname that stuck with me since then.
Hey, you got it once, and that's all that matters. None of us can hold on to it forever. So, one thing I like to do whenever I will say this: one thing I love about being a content creator is the fact that I get to interact with other really good content creators. I feel very fortunate in that manner because there's probably no way I would have ever even talked to you any other way. So it feels great whenever I get this opportunity. I feel badly for people who don't get this, but I like to know like what's like your background, where you grew up, what were your influences, and how you ended up where you are today, just like on a general rule.
My background is that I grew up in a rural area. I lived in the country. My dad and mom were blue collar people. My dad worked a job at a propane gas company and had a part-time thing at home where he had a little bit of a farm business where he had throughout the years pigs or cows. We raised tobacco when I was a kid. That's a big thing here in Kentucky. Back in the day was every kid whose parents owned very much any amount of land, they raised tobacco to pay the bills. And I grew up in a small town of like 2,000 people, uh, very, very Republican in that area. And the county that I live in, I know that probably sounds like typical. Hey, Kentucky, small town, Republican. But Kentucky until 20 or 30 years ago was super Democrat. Kentucky was kind of slow to become a Republican state,
Hmm.
particularly in state politics. Like Kentucky's been voting for Republicans in national offices for decades,
Yeah.
but Democrats, the old Southern Democrat type of party, ran Kentucky state politics up until the early 2000s. But the county that I'm from had been a stronghold of Republicanism for like 100 years. I don't know. I've talked to a lot of people that I know who are historians from that area. Like, hey, what was it about this county that made
Hmm.
it a
That's weird.
what made it a Republican stronghold? Nobody knows. Just one day in the 1890s, the Republican Party came in there, held some sort of function, and all of a sudden everybody was Republicans. Nothing changed. There was no wokeness of late 1800s, early 1900s Republican politics.
Hmm.
Everything was still segregated. There was no, black kids didn't even have a high school where I went to. Even back in the segregation days, they had an elementary school. If they wanted to go get a high school education, they had to go to somewhere else to go to high school. Because I mean, things that you would think meant being a Republican back then didn't become part of people's way of life there. Like there was no um, the old Abraham Lincoln Republican Party.
Yeah.
But today it's still exactly the same.
Yeah.
The rest of the state has flipped and become Republican, and everything there is still Republican. But I grew up as a Republican kid. My parents were Republicans. I did have a grandfather who was super Democrat. Um, but I just grew up thinking I was a Republican. Didn't really ever question it. Um, and then I feel like what really started to change me was a guy named George W. Bush. And I think Iraqi freedom is really what's kind of jarred me and made me go, wait a minute, what's this about? I never really bought into the weapons of mass destruction. Whenever we invaded Iraq for Iraqi freedom,
Hmm.
I was deployed to Bosnia whenever we actually invaded there. And I remember my dad sending me an email that was like, "Yeah, it's really sucks that we're going to war, but we're." It was kind of like, but things will be okay, and they attacked us type thing, and I just remember being like, "No, Dad." For the second time in like what 13 or 14 years, we're invading this country again.
Hmm.
These people have no reason to do anything but hate the United States at this
Yeah,
point.
of course. Yeah.
And and that's when I really started changing the way I felt about, am I Republican? Am I Democrat? Am I not either one? And then you know, I started going to college whenever I got out of high school. I wasn't ready for it emotionally. Um, Mature. I didn't have the maturity level to really be committed to going to college, and it was a horrible year or two
Yeah.
experience. Beginning, I ended up quitting. I got married really young, had some kids, went back to college as a non-traditional student,
Hmm.
uh, and I didn't get my bachelor's degree till I was 35. But I think going to college and getting some of those intellectual um, being challenged intellectually in the way that I was at an older age, at a time when I was willing to accept that maybe some of the things that I'd learned growing up were not the way that they were really portrayed. I think that played a big part into changing me into the political, progressive thinking person that I am today. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's you mentioned that what were you saying that Kentucky stayed Democratic at the state level until the early 2000s.
hmm
And I imagine what caused that shift was the presidency of Bill Clinton. Because Clinton, for those of you who don't remember, like Clinton was he was really preaching himself. Like, what do they call them? Blue dog Democrats back in the day, where they were still Democratic conservative voters, like Reagan Democrats. And Clinton was really popular amongst those folks until the incredibly successful campaign by Rush Limbaugh, Newt Gingrich, and the conservative movement of the '90s to just make. And this isn't coming from someone defending Bill Clinton. Fuck that guy. This is not that has nothing to do with it at all. But it's just the accusations against Clinton is the same ones they use against Obama or Biden or any Democrat since Jimmy Carter, that they're totalitarian fascists. They're here to de-Christianize the nation and to take away your family's rights and freedoms. And it worked. It's one of the most successful movements I've ever seen.
absolutely. We're dealing with its effects today.
Yes.
You know, Rush Limbaugh created. I remember when that was a thing. I remember my dad coming home, I don't know, one day, early 90s, with a book that was written by Rush Limbaugh. Somebody at work gave me this to read. And I remember when Rush Limbaugh's television show, late night TV show, got put on our local ABC channel at
Hmm.
11 o'clock at night. And so he was like the very first person, I feel like, who made who took people and their political philosophy from being and what they consumed about the politics, from being something that they heard on the 6 o'clock news or the 10 o'clock news, to being this thing that they're constantly being bombarded with, like it's an all day thing
Yeah.
that that becomes this overwhelming presence in their life, and really feeds on. I mean, it really feeds on people's fears,
Yep.
uh, and conservatives have a lot. Their whole ideology is based on fear of everything that they hold dear is something somebody wants to take away from them. So if you can just really plug into that and feed them constantly, I mean, Rush Limbaugh did that better than anybody. And
Rush Limbaugh, he was responsible for making the word liberal a bad word. It
yeah,
was like it was yeah, he actually made it into an insult, and it still kind of works. And it's funny though that these days we use liberal as an insult, but the other way. Not that they're too far left, but they're not left enough. And I remember hearing people like during the Iraq War, like the early 2000s and everything. People would, call into radio shows or something and talk, and it's like, well, your problem is that you're a liberal, and the guy says, well, I am. Well, aha, you admitted it. You're a liberal. Like they had got him in something. Like it was that big of a deal that it's actually it's impossible to overestimate how powerful Rush Limbaugh was in creating the culture that we have today. This culture of suspicion of institutions and anti-intellectualism and at least feigned obeisance to religious domination of the culture. It's funny because Rush Limbaugh wasn't like this actual super religious guy, but he had to pretend that this was a big deal, even though personally he didn't care.
Right. Yeah. And without Rush Limbaugh, there's no MAGA.
No.
MAGA could have been the early 2000s when Trump ran as a reform party or whatever, but he made it nowhere because that transformation of American conservatism had not come far enough along to allow for the electing of that type of person yet. People were still thinking at that moment, even conservatives, like, oh, this guy can't be president. But, continue to progress it a few more years, and all of a sudden it's possible.
Yeah, it's the continuations of very easy to track. Without Rush, there's no Newt Gingrich. Without Newt Gingrich, there's no George W. Bush. Without George W. Bush, there's no Sarah Palin. And without Sarah Palin, there's no Donald Trump. Like it's very easy to track. And you can even throw a lot of other people in along the way because the Republican Party, at least in our lifetimes, has never been good. Let's not pretend. This is why it annoys me when people say we need to return to the no, we don't. That party was bad too. But the party was at least a professional organization. You had politicians like George Bush Sr. or John McCain, like people who put a lot of value and importance on seeming like they're doing the right thing and following the rules. And eventually, it happened slowly. It didn't start with Sarah Palin. It started with people like Mike Huckabee and people like Rick Santorum and Scott Walker, and it kind of evolved into like more and more inmates who ran the asylum, and then they start running for president, and more Clarence Thomas, they start getting elected to the Supreme Court. And this is the thing. Speaking of Clarence Thomas with the Supreme Court, I always would make fun of Republicans, telling them that this crusade they're on to overturn Roe v. Wade was a fool's errand because the Republicans Supreme Court would never be stupid enough to overturn Roe v. Wade. I always joked about that. They're going to use it as a way to raise funds and to scare you and to hype you up because they know if they overturned it, it'd be political poison. And they actually did it. I underestimated how many true believers they would put on the Supreme Court.
I think that for me was a watershed moment for realizing, holy crap, they're way more crazy than I thought they because
dumber, at least dumber than I thought they were.
Months before that, when it was coming up, I was like, y'all, there is no way in hell that they're ever going to overturn this because they will lose this issue.
Yeah.
Like for 40 years, they've been able to ram this down people's throats and act like they're on the evangelical rights side. And at no point have they had to deliver anything to get those votes other than say it. And now I'm like, when that came down, I was like, oh my God, like I continue to feel as though that was still never supposed to happen. Like Mitch McConnell and the establishment lost control in such a way with that being that, like that was I still believe that was a huge mistake, and that there's still somebody who's probably supposed to end up in a body bag for allowing that.
Well, John Roberts didn't want it either. Like John Roberts is for lack of a better term, like he's the reasonable conservative justice, the Chief Justice Supreme Court. And he did not want this this like what was it, like the preliminary ruling they had for overturning it. He didn't want that to be public. Like he wanted to keep that under wraps and try to talk people out of it, but they
Right.
released it anyway. So it overplay it you know, made him play his hand there, because he understood, because he's smart, that, oh, this is actually bad for us. And it is wild to see that they actually did it, because not even just from the political consequences of people having a backlash against it, but also because now they can't really raise money over it, because it was a great issue to rile up the base and have them donate a bunch of cash to wink and a nod, we're going to do it. But now they've lost that too. And so I was surprised to see that, but it's I shouldn't have been, because the crazies have been becoming more and more common. And now we'll get to that a little bit later. It's one of our topics of why the Republicans are so crazy. But I wanted to ask you personally. So you mentioned going to college and how that helped change your point of view. And this is something that is true, but conservatives look at it the wrong way. Conservatives are deeply anti-intellectual. They're always telling their kids, don't go to college. College is where, you know, they will brainwash you into being a Marxist. And there's these Marxist professors who are just waiting to turn you into this evil, you know, communist, which is insane. Because how many Marxist professors did you have in college? Can you count how many you had?
I mean, I went to Western Kentucky University. I'm fairly certain I didn't have a single Marxist professor. Now, I had a freaking hardcore GOP professors, but
well, yeah, I mean, that's going to be common for most colleges, like no matter where it is. Like you might have one Marxist professor in 4 years, maybe. That's like, it's pretty rare that you actually run across one, or one that's openly Marxist. And they think that that's the setup, that college is just there to, you know, trick your kids into becoming more left wing. But that's not the reality. The reality is, like what you mentioned. First of all, you learn more. Yeah, and the more you learn, the less conservative you become. This is rock solid, airtight. It happens every single time, even amongst conservatives. The more educated conservatives are less conservative than the less educated ones, because, you know, when you learn more about reality and life and economics and science and politics and religion, you realize that the stuff that you were taught when you were 9 years old in your hometown isn't the reality of how the world works. And also, you get to meet other people from different parts of the country or different parts of the world. And there's no possible scenario in which you go into college conservative and leave more conservative. You always become more liberal, no matter what.
Yeah, for sure. I actually just today, I don't know what your background is, or what people you are on your Facebook timeline, but being from where I'm at, my Facebook timeline is MAGA.
Yeah.
Everybody, probably 8 out of 10 people are MAGA people, from people who I've known growing up, people who I deal with in everyday life. And there's this guy that I know, former military. I think he retired in E8, and he shared a meme today about, I forget what his name is, one of these Jewish rich people known throughout the world, who
probably a Rothschild or something.
That's yeah. And he's like, he shares a meme about how this guy is worth 500 trillion.
I think I've seen that one.
Dollars.
Yeah.
And he shared this today and says, you people need to really educate yourself. This is who's running. And I'm like, see, this is why education is important.
Yeah,
like,
right.
It doesn't take much education. Like, the fact that you can't see the number 500 trillion with a dollar sign on it and immediately know whatever the claim is false, even if it is like talking about an entire country, not just a person.
Right.
Or, you know, I'm like, and this is from somebody who is railing all the time about our national debt that is what, 34 trillion dollars at this. That, oh God, we're never going to get out from under this national debt, and it's going to destroy our children forever. But you're saying there's a guy who has $500 trillion, as if that's possible.
It's the gullibility that gets me. That's the thing gets me the most. And it's like you see something like that, and there's just no critical thought involved whatsoever. Like they see scary man has a lot of money, and now I'm afraid. I guarantee he didn't even think about the 500 trillion part. Like
Yeah,
he didn't start to consider, oh my God, does that much currency even exist on planet Earth? Yeah, let alone in the hands of one human being. And how is this human being not emperor of the planet with 500 trillion
yeah.
dollars? It's just, I, it's
I'm like, if there's somebody on this planet with 500 trillion dollars, make no mistake about it, we would invade that person. That we would seize all their money. We would write a check to pay off our national debt. And I mean, but yeah, that's the kind of stuff. Just all right. Let's say you're not good with numbers. You're not good with math, which I'm not, but I'm good enough with numbers to know that 500 trillion is not a real number.
yeah.
When it comes to money, but the ability to navigate information and understand how good a source
Yes.
is what the inability to do that is what makes MAGA possible.
Yes.
The people who out of Republicans in general, 60% of them, let's conservative numbers, 60% of them have fallen into the internet and they can't get out. Like they are unable to decipher information, to be able to look. They're just like that. They'll share something, it becomes real to them, and the person who comes up to them in the comments and says, "Hey, do you realize you just shared a story from a website called conservativesaresstupid.com," and you, as if this is like a real story. Like this is the level of intellectual ability and critical thinking and processing of information that most of these people can do. They're just unable to process
Yeah.
anything.
60% is an awfully generous number. Like I'd say 80 easy. I mean, it's just like if you're still voting Republican at this point, you're probably MAGA. Like almost certainly. There's a tiny segment of Mitt Romney style Republicans, but those guys are dying off way quicker than the rabid just like foaming at the mouth QAnon folks, which has taken over the Republican Party, which is why it annoys me when I mentioned earlier where people say we need to go to a pre-Trump. No, this is the Republican Party now. This is it. It's a bunch of conspiracy-addled morons who can't, like, their media literacy is bad. Like and it goes beyond just news media. It's like, so well, you remember Stephen Colbert's show, and Stephen Colbert, he had a whole bit where he pretended to be a conservative pundit and just overplayed the insanity of it. I knew conservatives who thought Stephen Colbert was an actual conservative. They couldn't tell that it was a joke. Like that's how bad it's gotten. And have you seen? I people I knew, so I knew it wasn't a bit. Like people who knew me said, "Oh yeah, Stephen Colbert is obviously a conservative." It's like, really? Wow. Or they can't tell a show like The Boys is clearly making fun of Donald Trump and MAGA. Like they can't tell, and it's wild. Like it's just wild to imagine that we're sharing the same universe, because you see these interviews with these folks and they'll say stuff like, well, Joe Biden's not the president. Donald Trump is still the president. Oh, so is inflation his fault? No, it's not his fault. And it's like, there's no actual, dot connecting that makes any sense, but they fall into wild conspiracies because they've been trained to do so. They've been told for 30, 40 years now that scientists are lying to you about evolution. They're lying to you about global warming. Doctors are lying to you, or psychologists are lying to you about, homosexuality or trans. Like every possible institution or people know what they're talking about. They're all lying to you because they hate God or something. So yeah, you're going to stop believing in everything at that point.
But the billionaire from New York, he's telling you all the truth.
Yeah, that guy. That guy's got it. And that goes into their complaints about the elites, which crack me up. Like that guy you said he posted, there's a guy with $500 trillion. And it's funny because when it gets right down to it, conservatives complaining about elites doesn't actually refer to rich people. That's not what they mean. Like they don't mean rich people are elites. Like But Elon Musk, you
All,
know, has
all
billions of. Hmm?
the time. I get called an elitist all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. So like Elon Musk with billions of dollars is not one of the elite. He's part of the common man, but you know, the barista with green hair making $12 an hour, she's part of the elite. It's like they don't actually refer to financial elites, they refer to cultural elites. Like, and cultural elitism is just, you know, people who say, well, racism is bad and maybe we shouldn't be mean to queer folks. That's elitism in their mind.
Yeah, I'm part of the elite because I told old guy, I'm the guy who gets in the comments and says, hey, if you believe a meme that says a guy's got $500 trillion and it's maybe time to get off the internet, that you're an elitist.
Yeah. It's
I'm not a
well.
dumb.
Go ahead.
Just because I'm not a dumbass. I mean, you're an elitist because you're not stupid.
Yeah. They like to throw that charge out at you know, lefties a lot. We're like, oh, you know, you guys are arrogant. Yeah, we are. It's like because like we're smarter than you. We've earned the right to be arrogant, at least in this category where we have. Like, if you were a mechanic and you knew more about me than cars, I wouldn't shit on you for being an elitist. No, I've studied this. I know what I'm talking about, and you're just, you know, guessing off this, you know, random stuff. And so I wanted to ask you about this very same thing about you know, people disagreeing facts. And so you're either in the military or a vet of the military. I don't know which one. But I retired 2 years ago, medical retirement. And what made you decide to join the military? Because I was interested in what you said about how you first started questioning the Iraq War when it happened, which is pretty rare overall, generally, and especially rare for someone who was already in the military at that point.
Yeah, so I'm still in. I've got 25 years in, and
Woo! 25. Wow.
so I uh, I I had a lot of family members who were in the military.
Mhm.
My dad wasn't, but my dad had a younger brother in the Navy, had a younger sister in the Marine Corps. Um, both my grandfathers were World War II vets. My mom's dad was in the Army. My dad's dad was in the Navy. Um, and so I had this strong feeling of towards service in the military being a good and honorable thing
Right.
that had been, you know, just by not really beaten into me or anything. Just, you know, I love my grandpas. They were in the military. I love my aunt, my uncle. I look up to all of them, and I built this service narrative up in my own mind as like I want to be like them, right?
Right.
I had some of that going on, but I left high school. Or I graduated high school. I went to college that first year, immediately following. My best friend went to college with me, and neither one of us were college student material at the time. We we were we drop we'd see each other on campus or whatever, and be like, hey, you want to ditch these classes and go play golf or do whatever, and so we do that. So we ended up, both of us, after the end of our first year, we were both on academic probation. We're about to lose our financial aid, all this kind of stuff. And I remember one day he calls me and says, hey man, you know, we really need some time to reset, figure out what we're going to do. He's like, I saw this sign on the National Guard Armory that said, go to college tuition free. Let's just go in there and talk to them and see what they got going on.
Mhm.
And so we did. We went, and they were able to sucker us in. Like $2,500 signing bonus is what we
Woo!
got.
Rolling in the cash.
And yeah, I thought it was rich. And and they were able to say, like, hey, you know, this is the National Guard. You know, this unit is not deployed since 1963 during the Berlin crisis. And are, oh, cool, we get this money, we get, you know, a GI Bill, all this extra stuff, and we're not even probably gonna have to go anywhere. That's cool.
Pretty sweet deal. Sign me
And
up.
so we do that. So we do that, and then September 11th changes everything about how the National Guard operates, and we ended up getting deployed. Like I said, we were deployed whenever the Iraqi freedom happened, and yeah, I really, when we were training up, we were in Germany. I remember we went on a day trip I feel like we were in Munich, Germany, just hanging out, and there was this huge protest in Munich the day that we're hanging out there that was anti-U.S., anti, hey, they're about to invade Iraq and this is not cool kind of thing, and we were like, damn, wow, we didn't realize it was that big of a national or international outcry for what we're about to do, right? And but yeah, I pretty much immediately, whenever the all weapons of mass destruction stuff started, I wasn't buying into it. I wasn't buying it. I thought it sounded like BS from the beginning. I kind of felt like, we knew that Afghanistan is where we really need to be tracking down the terrorist groups that did 9/11. And it was pretty obvious that was kind of half-hearted effort for a long time. I didn't really understand why we're not focusing on the people who actually did this.
Yeah.
Why did we turn our attention toward Iraq? And I did eventually get deployed to Iraq. I didn't go until it was all getting drawn down. And whenever I was there, the job that I did really kind of opened my eyes to what this was all about. I was in access control, and
Ooh.
what I did was actually called an adjudicator. So my job was you have all these contractors like Halliburton, Brown and Root, and they hire people to come on base and do their contract work. And people think of the Halliburtons and all those different companies. They pay these. You hear about these contractors that go, oh yeah, he goes over there, he makes
Yeah,
$200,000
yeah.
tax free. Well, 90% of their employees though are local nationals. They're Iraqis that they're hiring for $400 a month, or they're Ugandans that they're hiring to put on towers as guards, paying them $600 a month. The majority of the contracts that they're filling with people they pay nothing. And so when you have a contractor come in the country and say have 100, here's 100 Iraqis that we want vetted, and they're gonna work doing plumbing or delivering water or cooking meals, spraying out porter shitters, whatever. Here you go, do their backgrounds. And so we would take their biometrics, their irises of their eye, their fingerprints, all these different things, and say, yes, this person, nothing came back. They can work for Brown and Root or Halliburton or KBR, and or they can't. And so the amount of money, you look into, I forget how many billions of dollars each of these countries made on their contracts in Iraq, and the minimal amount of money they're having to pay to do the jobs. If Congress awards them, 60, 80, $100,000 per person to do whatever, but then they're paying an Iraqi $400 a month to do that job, rather than somebody from the U.S. paying them money that they're getting paid for that. The amount of money that they're making. And then Dick Cheney, I can't remember how many millions of dollars in bonuses he got for his service.
It's wild how, I mean, I guess it's not wild. Of course, he got away with it, but that Dick Cheney got away with the no bid contracts first, and that everyone knew it was happening and no one did anything about it. And like we've set a terrible precedent with just letting presidents and vice presidents get away with that kind of shit. It's incredibly insane. I will say one thing, what you mentioned about like the Ugandans working in Iraq. So on a personal, very small level. So folks, those are we call them TCNs, third country nationals, people who are from a different nation than either us or the nation we're, occupying or working with. They don't apply anyway, but they're from a third country, and they kind of save your life in food prep, because you can't get like pork anywhere. But the TCNs can help you out with that, so that's always pretty good. But it is crazy when you were talking about, like, so you saw the opposition in Germany for the U.S. invasion of Iraq, that there was a healthy resistance internationally against this, especially in France. And at the time, Americans were so pissed off at France that they started this ridiculous thing where they wouldn't call French things French. They're like, we're not calling them French fries anymore. We're calling them freedom fries, and it's freedom toast. Like, you remember, like that? The nonsense that started happening because wasn't Jacques Chirac, the president of France, said, "I don't think this is a good idea," and George W. Bush, went over to Jacques Chirac. And Jacques Chirac said, "Yeah, you're not convincing me that this whole Iraq thing is justified and that it won't be this counterproductive mess that makes things worse than they already are." And he said George W. Bush looked him straight in the eye and said, "I think it's important that we invade Iraq because I believe that the demons Gog and Magog are, are moving about in the Middle East. We have to stop them." And Chirac said, "This is crazy. I'm not going for this." And Americans hated him for it, for like an objectively correct and reasonable opinion. If someone came to you and said, "We need to fight demons," and your reaction is anything other than "you're crazy," then you're just as crazy. But for Americans, it's like, nope, we got freedom fries now. Like in Congress, they changed the menu to say from French fries to freedom fries. That's how ridiculous this shit was.
Yeah. And now everybody agrees it was bullshit.
Like that's the insulting part. That's the insulting part, that for the better part of like 15 years, American conservatives and the Republican Party shit on anyone who even suggested the Iraq war was a bad idea. They said you weren't a patriot. They said you were a bad American. They said you hated the troops. They said that you're a traitor. I mean, everyone. And then 2015, Donald Trump in South Carolina says, "Yeah, Iraq was a bad idea." And all of a sudden, everyone's like, yeah, I guess it was. No apologies, no reflection.
That's what so many of the people I know now who, in 2005, 2006, if you made any sort of like, hey, it's really kind of BS we're even over there. Like we're in this mess is horrible. I mean, to think about when it all started, I love to try to always give a shout out to General Eric Shinseki whenever I can. General Shinseki was the Army Chief of Staff whenever Iraqi freedom was about, during the planning process of Iraqi freedom. And he's the guy, he stands up and says, the things y'all are wanting to do, this whole nation building, we're going to build Iraq into this democratic country. General Shinseki says, in order to do what you're wanting to do, we're going to need hundreds of thousands of troops committed for at least a decade. And it was like, this guy's crazy. Get this guy out of here. They made him retire.
Boo this man.
Get him retired. The dude retired before it kicked off. I don't know who the next couple in line were, but they got rid of them for basically saying the same thing. And they went back and pulled General Schumacher out of retirement, made him the Army Chief of Staff because he had some special forces background. It's like, yeah, you can do it with just, a few thousand troops in 5 years and be done. But now the audacity of the people who I know for a fact were the same people who were like, you're a piece of shit if you don't believe in this. God, playing Toby Keith and Lee Greenwood music, blaring out their pickup truck. No, you're an asshole. And I'm like, actually, I wear a uniform, but whatever. It doesn't make me unpatriotic to say this is not what we're being told. But those same people today are the same ones that will say Donald Trump's going to clean up the swamp, just like how George W. Bush led us into Iraq on lies, like lies that you cheered him on the entire time to do.
It's just no self-reflection whatsoever, and practice like the most virulent forms of cancel culture imaginable. Like the Dixie Chicks had the temerity to say, "Hey, this is a bad idea," and they revolted against them. I mean, like just awful shit with we'll put a boot in your ass kind of stuff, and not a single apology. None of it. I did a video about Cindy Sheehan a while ago. And Cindy Sheehan, for those of you who aren't familiar, she was the mother of a soldier who died in the Iraq war. And she spent years just publicly speaking out against this. And conservative media trashed this woman for like about a decade, calling her a bad American.
I remember being in an auditorium once, and my battalion commander standing in front of a whole auditorium, giving a rah-rah speech about patriotism and whatnot. And I remember him bringing her up when that all first started, and she started getting the spotlight of, hey, here's this mom who's really not that grateful about the fact that her son got killed.
Incredible.
And I remember the battalion commander just being like, you know what, I'm not angry at her, but if I could get a moment with her, I would let her know that I felt like she wasn't honoring her son's memory. It's like, dude, that's
it's impossible to understand how remarkably commonplace that sentiment was. That people said that, yeah, she lost her son, but she should really shut the fuck up because this war is really important. And just no remorse over those actions whatsoever, just moving on to the next thing. So I did want to ask about the fact that you are in the military, because I love the fact that I was a veteran. I use it all the time. I use it as a sword and a shield against conservatives. It's perfect because a lot of them like to challenge, oh, well, what have you ever fought for? What have you ever done? Like, what? And 99% of them statistically have never been in the military. It's like, oh, well, I got this. What do you have? I'm sorry that my years of service don't stack up to you working at Jim's Farm and Fleet for the last 3 years. I'm sorry that doesn't seem to measure up for you. So I always love using it. But outside of that, like even before I got out of the military, talking to service members was always fascinating, because I can't speak for your experience, but people have this idea that the military is like 90% conservative. That is not true at all. Like, I'd say it's like 60-40 conservative. It's a lot closer than you would think, mainly because there's so many minorities in the military that kind of skews it. But I would have conversations with people, and I would just be spouting literally Marxist rhetoric, just telling and admitting it's like, yeah, this is what I believe or whatever. And so many times I had people say, wow, you actually do make a lot of sense. That I don't like agree with you, but if you ran for office, I would vote for you. I was like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Why would you vote for someone you don't agree with? But it's actually, if people respect you and they have a high opinion of you, they will listen to you. And that was my experience. That's not for everybody, but I don't know how yours has been. Like, are you vocal a lot, whenever you talk to people in the military, or your friends in the military at least?
I don't talk a lot of politics in uniform unless I'm approached about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
About it, and in private wants to talk about it. But as far as I get these people in my comments all the time when if I post something in uniform or whatever, somebody will comment, "Oh, I bet you're terrible to your troops because they having a woke liberal."
Oh my God.
First of all, nobody even knows. They don't even know unless they follow me on TikTok. They have no idea what my political ideology is, because I don't. And I think that's the big difference in a conservative mindset and progressive mindset.
Man.
Conservatives always feel like they're in a safe space where they can say whatever.
Yes. Sorry.
Progressives have a muzzle. I think we know what is the right time and what is not the right time to share our political ideology. Like, I never hear a progressive, if somebody asks some random question in a group of people, like, hey, what do you think the biggest challenge is facing blah, blah, blah? I would never hear a progressive person immediately turn it political and go, Trump, when you're talking about something completely unrelated. However, conservative people always feel like they're able to do that. Joe Biden's the biggest, like, dude, we're not even, like, why would you think you could do that? And as far as I think you're right in that the military, my experience has been probably 60-40 or some semblance of that, with a large chunk really having no political identity.
Yeah.
Or just hearing. But this conservative ownership over all things military and armed forces, as the armed forces are this conservative group of people who are out here just doing God's will. Like I saw somebody recently had posted this story about some football coach I think it was a college football program, maybe it's Florida State, had invited this former Navy SEAL to come to football camp or something and do this inspirational speech for the football team. And it was shared, and like the the tagline or the headline for this story was like something to do with like Florida State coach goes against wokeness and invites former Navy SEAL to talk.
Oh,
And I'm like, whoever it was that shared it, I was like, there's nothing woke or not woke about inviting someone from the military to come and give us a speech to you. Like that's neither it's neither conservative nor liberal, or there's no political connotation to that whatsoever. You just invited a person from a particular background to come and talk. Like the guy, the thought process, if you look at a conservative person in that thought process and go, hey, you want me to really blow your mind? I know that guy. Like he's a straight up stone cold killer. Like doesn't miss. Like killed tons of people. Won X number of medals. Voted for Biden. Like the thought like just to watch them be like, what he what? Like the military is one of the most diverse organizations that there is, and all ways that diversity can exist. Like
mhm.
there's kind of person there to sit there and think that the military is a bunch of conservatives. Like nothing further from the truth.
Yeah, and I ran across what you mentioned a lot too, where this happened. Like it was so cathartic hearing you say it because it was my exact experience. I would always mind my own business at work in the military. I would like I never preemptively made political speeches. I never talked about it at all. However, every conservative I knew took every available opportunity to just, blast like this right wing nonsense over and over and over again. And eventually they would get around to asking me, and then I would give but only when I was asked. That's the only time it ever happened. And I was just shocked. It just goes to a lot too. Like, listen, the more you know and the more educated you are, the less likely you are to just unprovoked just start spouting off nonsense. And the problem is what you mentioned, that a lot of them would identify themselves as non-political, which is true. That's probably most people. The problem is that if you're born in the United States of America and you just have a regular education at a public school, you're gonna come out pretty conservative because that's the way the school system is set up. It's set up to tell you that you know the founding fathers were great and noble people who, sure, they made some mistakes here and there, but their intentions were good. And we should, not question anything they said, even though they died 200 years ago. Yeah, we had the whole slavery thing, but let's not talk too much about it. The United States is the greatest nation to ever exist. It's all conservative propaganda. So you grow up not interested in politics, your views are going to be seen through a fairly conservative lens. So a lot of times, whenever they say what they believe, they don't even realize it's conservative propaganda. Like they don't. They just think that's just the way things are.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Um, and I think that's really you hit the nail on the head. That they feel like what they're saying is not political
No.
sometimes, and it actually is.
Yeah, it's kind of like with capitalism, with the Tina principle. There is no alternative. Like they just think this is how the world works, and you're just stating the sky is blue when you say that the United States is the greatest and capitalism is the best we can do, and the cops are your friends. Like they don't know any better.
Yeah.
And so I saw a video you did the other day. It's actually what made me prompt to ask you on the show. I wanted to ask you about this particular issue. And you were talking about one of the conservatives' favorite lines whenever they see something they don't like, we're housing migrants, or we're sending money to help an ally defend themselves. You already know where I'm going with this. Like, well, we have homeless veterans here in the country. That money could go to them. And I've always hated when they do stuff like that, because whenever measures come up to help homeless people, or anybody, veterans or otherwise, conservatives are the first people in line to say, no, we can't afford that. So it's disingenuous. And second, you brought up like, well, hey, how many homeless veterans are there actually in the United States? And there is a number. I mean, we can look it up or whatever, but the reality is that I I found out a lot during my ETS. ETS is for those expiration term. Isn't it funny the acronyms you use so much in the military that you don't realize how odd they sound to other people? But basically, when your contract is up and when you get out. And I was very surprised at first the VA process, which was very good in getting your medical done. They weren't trying to stop you from getting, your injuries claimed. They actually did their best to try to help. They were very quick. Like the VA here in Indianapolis, I go there and I'm seen just like that. It's one of the most efficient hospitals I've ever seen. And then I actually looked up the satisfaction rate for the VA as a medical provider. It's like 92%. It's wild, like how happy people are with the VA, because you hear all the horror stories. And if you check the satisfaction rate for private insurers, you guys can check. Spoiler alert: it's a lot lower than 90%. I'll give you that. Like it's one of the best.
Good. It makes good memes. It makes good memes to take a shit on the VA and to make fun of it. Post a picture of a skeleton and say, "Oh yeah, waiting for the VA." But man,
it's pretty good.
I've not really done much with the VA,
right?
But people who have, and I've not met anybody who's had a bad experience. I got a couple of buddies who reached out to me recently, like, "Hey man, have you went to the VA yet and tried to claim some of your stuff?" I'm like, I'm still in. I don't want to get caught up in a medical board to try to boot me out because I'm hurt. So I'm not really wanting to do it right now, but I have not met any of them who said it was anything other than an easy process.
It's
like, I got a buddy who did. He's like, I just got on there one day and went to the VA website and clicked some stuff, and he's like, it asked me a few questions. One of the questions was like, "Do you have a combat action badge?" "Yes, I've been awarded a combat action badge." He said, as soon as I hit submit, it shot back at me that, "Well, since you got a combat action badge, that's automatic 30% disability rating, and we'll get back with you with what the other stuff is." And I got a couple other guys. I got a buddy who's the commander of the VFW post here, and they bring in a guy to the VFW and the American Legion like once a month, and he like knows all the ins and outs of the VA process, and he'll take people's DD-214s and talk to them, to interview them, write it all up and send it off. And guys are like, I went and talked to that guy. He filled out an application for me in 3 months. I got a check hit my direct deposit. So, I mean, absolutely, there are homeless veterans out there, just like all other homeless people.
Yeah.
A lot of them choose to be homeless. They whether it's a conscious decision or whether it's a decision that's made out of mental illness, they're out there. But I really just don't get behind. First of all, I don't get behind this idea that being a veteran makes you entitled to a lot of stuff,
or at least more stuff than anyone else.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I joined the military because the opportunity there was bigger than anything I was going to get. Like, I could have went and worked on the line at the factory, ended up with a broke back from slumping over for 30 years on the line at the factory, or I could go to the military and carry a rucksack for 20 something years and have my back go bad. Either way, I'm going to end up with a back. But the idea that the person who works at the factory providing whatever service to the community and to society that they provide is entitled to nothing when they become disabled, but because you join the military, you're entitled to $3,700 a month tax-free from the VA for 100% disability, where you can still work another job if you want to. Just blows my mind. I don't think that way. Like, this whole, we're a special class of people who can do no wrong, who society should bend over backwards 24/7 to just like compensate us repeatedly every day. "Oh, thank you for your service." I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. So with the homelessness thing, I wouldn't agree necessarily that a lot of homeless people choose to be homeless. It's like you said, that it's a byproduct of like either addiction or some sort of mental illness where they're unable to keep steady employment. I think given the option, most would rather have a house than not have a house. But that's what it usually comes down to. And with the military in particular, there are tons of programs for homeless veterans, like ton. That's one thing that is just amazing, like how you were talking about how people it's the memes with the VA and how it gets a bad. It got a bad rap because it was apparently pretty bad 20 or 30 years ago. It was apparently just awful, and that's where like the connotation came from, and it kind of stuck around. Although it's gotten a lot better, even in one of the ways Trump tried to take credit for with VA Choice. So basically, what that is that if I need to see a doctor for X for whatever reason, my knee, shoulder, back, or whatever, if they can't see me within a certain amount of time, I can't remember, it's 30 days, 60 days. If they cannot see me, there's a list of private providers that they will send you to that they've contracted with. So you're not waiting forever to do it. And that actually was signed under Obama, but Trump tried to take credit for it, which is pretty funny. But I couldn't agree with you more about this. I would say undeserved veneration we have for the military as this class of superheroes who you have to kiss the feet of every time you see them. And let's be real, you in the military, uh, soldiers or Marines and airmen, whatever, they play into it. Like a lot of them really shit on civilians every chance they get. They're talking about all these fucking civilians. They're lazy. Whatever. I've been in the military a long time. You guys are lazy too. Trust me, I've seen it. And they act like the fact that, okay, yeah, you were in the military, you did a job, you did a service to the nation. True. And yeah, you do deserve those benefits. However, you're telling me stonemasons don't deserve those benefits? You're telling me teachers don't? You're telling me firefighters or carpenters, anybody who also, donates their life and their body and their time and time with their family to better this nation? Nah, fuck them. They don't get anything. That's wild that we have that kind of point of view in this country.
Yeah, yeah, totally. The idea that the service that is provided through being in the armed forces is up here, and the service that is being provided in all the different professions and careers that make this country and society what it is just, it's a hero worship, and it's a new thing. That's the thing, is it's a new thing. You wouldn't go back to 1930 and have somebody walk into a community wearing a uniform of the armed forces and have everybody that comes into contact with them bend over backwards and just worship them as this is a very new Lee Greenwood, God bless the USA, conservative rhetoric.
Yeah. Especially it is listen, this is just my thing here, but it especially annoys me when you have some guy who served 3 years, got out as an E3 because he was chaptered for height and weight, and he walks in acting like he's Audie Murphy or some shit. Like, get the fuck out of here, man. That really bugs me when they play into it. And also with one thing I've noticed a lot is it's also the obsession with masculinity, which is very interesting, seeing from the military standpoint, because I don't know about you, but I've noticed that a lot of the guys who, present themselves as the most hyper masculine guys, the Rangers, stuff like that, those are the most emotional people I have ever seen in my life. I have never met someone who was, tabbed up with everything you could imagine, whatever, who was like a strong, silent type. They were always wildly emotional, like in every aspect. Like not just like, oh, I'm violent emotional, but when things go wrong, they cry, they break down. Like they're mentally, not maybe I'm mentally unstable, but they're more in touch with their emotions than I have ever been. Like I am far more of a better example of someone who is like the stoic, strong, silent person than your average, right wing, trigger happy, Rambo wannabe. Have you noticed this? Because I noticed this a long time ago.
Yeah, I think that this idea of developing a culture that's built around what we do is really important. What we do is the most important. What we do is very scary and dangerous. And I'm like, if you're having to, it's almost like having to build a justification for uh for who you are and what you do. Like people who do that, they're trying to compensate for something. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Every time. Every time.
It's like, and I'm a lot like you. Like I'm super laid back. I don't ever lead with I'm a veteran. The fact I'm a veteran doesn't mean anything. I don't expect anybody to do whatever. I've been very I've done some kind of I know how to shoot. I'm a good shooter. I'm a competitive shooter. I've shot at the all army competition before. Shot
Damn.
some pretty top shooters in the military, and I don't feel the need to prove anything to anybody.
Right?
So it's like these alpha males in my comments. Oh, you little beta! Like, I don't have anything to prove to you,
Right.
man.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're hiding behind a faceless profile,
Yep.
I could I'm 100% confident I could destroy you like man to man, but I don't feel the need to, or like that culture to me is just so weird.
It is
And
a deep,
it is
deep insecurity.
it's
Deep. Like
annoying to me, and yeah, I don't get it.
I,
I'm not into it, and I'm not. I'm just one of these people that I don't. I'm a veteran, and I'm in still, but it's not my total identity. You know, I'm not going to be this person who goes to the Legion or the VFW, and for the 30 or 40 years that I live after I retire, all I'm ever going to identify as is
oh no.
still there. Am I still there?
Yeah, I lost it for a second. I'm sorry.
But if we looked at somebody who was like an electrician for 20 years, and then they retired, and like all day long all they talked about was how they were an electrician at one time, or they were a plumber, you'd be like, dude, you're a loser, man. Like
What's wrong with you?
why
Yeah.
are you living in the past like all the time?
I
um
yeah, I like you I'll see guys that I remember being with my family. My parents are from Georgia, and my dad went to visit a friend of his, and we went to his house, and he was a veteran, and we pull up like he hadn't been in the army for like 15, 20 years or something. And we pull up to his house, and his license plate is a personalized license plate that says like Sergeant Major. I'm like, oh, like this is like I like really. I mean, come on! Like you haven't been this for a long. It's okay to develop a personality outside of this job you did for 23 or 24 years. It's very strange. I don't understand having that kind of hole in your soul that you need to fill it with your job. I mean, not your family, not your hobbies, not your love, not your passion, but your fucking job. And it's just and then looking down because you're right, we would look down on anybody else doing something like that. And it's also like the example I mentioned earlier is also especially funny for someone who only spent 3 or 4 years in, who is wearing the hat and everything. That's kind of funny to see. But I don't know. I don't understand how they it just shows you like the lack of confidence they actually have. And that the fact they're always talking about masculinity, they're always talking about strength, they're always, playing subservience to militarism because they don't feel confident about themselves, which is why they're so easy to bully. I recommend doing that. Like it's like people a lot of times whenever I never get into debates with conservatives. I don't do it because one, it's a waste of time. They're not going to tell me anything I don't already know. I know their arguments better than they do. But bullying is the only language they understand. It's it. And so I always go right after their masculinity every single time. And it works. It always works because they're deeply insecure about the kind of men they are.
yeah, there's this new shtick on TikTok that's been hitting my algorithm, and there's this guy that I think it's like maybe his handle's like graybeard actual or something like
Hmm.
that. and his entire content is just him sitting in front of a microphone, and all of his content is focused on women are sluts.
Oh yeah, these guys.
Like any woman, don't get with a woman whose body count is higher than whatever. And I just find it so fascinating. Like I can't help but like go into the comments and look at all the men who are in there like, yeah, found out this the hard way. Yeah, my girl left me for whatever. Like she was a hoe from the beginning, and being like, these guys are these comments are full of men who are openly saying they can't keep a woman happy.
Yes. Yeah,
And, and, and get the answer to what they're doing wrong. They're coming to the TikTok page of a gray-headed 50 to 60-year-old man to have him tell them what they should be doing differently to please these women.
yeah, yeah.
To which the answer is just they're all hoes, and it's not you, it's them.
Yeah, exactly. It is so funny that these guys just tell on themselves. They just give the game away. It's like I'm 38 years old and I've never been able to satisfy a woman once in my life. They've all left me. I hope she hasn't slept with too many guys because maybe he's hung better than I am. It's just like they are terrified of everything about women. And so instead of like being a man and doing something about this. Like, okay, right? They always say men, we're the problem solvers. They have this problem in front of them, and what do? They get online and they bitch and complain and they bitch and moan and bitch. It's all they do. And it's like, you're supposed to be masculine. You're supposed to be alpha, and nothing about you screams alpha. Everything about you screams little child. That's all you're putting forth here. And I how do you expect anyone to take you seriously at this point? I don't get it at all.
It's the same guys. It's the same guys when you see the female content creators who are in the military, who are the big names. I have a hard time remembering people's handles on TikTok.
Yeah.
But every video that a female service member puts out, if there's the slightest bit of cuteness to it or playfulness about it, you'll go to the comments and it's those guys being like, oh, this girl slept her way to the top. Like, first of all, she's like a lieutenant. Like, she's not at the top. And like, what are you talking about? And then the ones that'll be like, sharpshooting, like, oh, your rank on your hat is not.
Oh, fuck off.
Wherever. And like, God, this is such a compensating group of individuals. I think I'll go to female mill talk and start pummeling a female service member to make myself feel better.
Yeah, it just shows that they lack feelings of inadequacy as a man, and they're looking for other men to tell them that they're all right. And insulting women is the only thing they have. That's all they got. Because you'll see, because women will post up and they'll say something like, I've kind of had it with men. Men have been, just horrible to me every time. So I'm taking a break and I'm not dating men. And those comment sections are flooded with dudes saying, oh, well, guess you're going to die old and alone then. And guess you should get a bunch of cats, guess you're going to be a boring old spinster. Maybe you should come back to dating men. However, whenever you see guys complaining about women, it's like, oh, well, I'm tired of America.
There are no women in
no.
They're none.
None.
Like calling women sluts all day. That's just shtick. I'll scroll through the comments and be like, man, I hope there's some woman in here just eviscerating these pathetic men. No, it's just a bunch of pathetic men.
More dudes.
Comments. That's it.
There are more dudes.
Them the time of day to even acknowledge the fact that they exist.
It's just so crazy. And it's like, and the thing is that they I don't know. It's a very strange phenomenon to watch. Like, it's very strange that, you've been told this your whole life, and they always say that women are like gold diggers. Oh, watch out for women, because, they're just trying to take your money. It's like, first off, you make $42,000 a year. No one is coming after your money. And I've never I've never met a man that was financially secure, that had his shit together, that was, stable and, you know, wealthy or upper middle class or anything like that. I've never heard any of those guys bitch about women, wanting to take their money. I've never seen it happen. Like, it's only like the broke guys who are like, oh man, I'm not gonna get with this chick because she's gonna fleece me for all my money. It's like, man, you work
Yeah.
at Pop Copy or some shit. Yeah, no one cares.
Let's
Go ahead.
go to twice a month. That's what it is.
Say what?
She wants to go to Applebee's twice a month. That's
I know, and that's all it takes. It's just, and also it's this is funny when we're down this road here, but also it's a contradictory message because what do they always say? They always say that a real man provides for his woman. She shouldn't have to work at all. She should be staying at home. It's like, okay, why are you mad at them for wanting what you're saying they should want? You should be happy about this, but they're not because they're losers. They don't know how to talk to women. They have no game. They have no like personal skills. They're not funny. They're not interested.
That circular thought process, though, it's in all part of their lives. Okay, the guys who think like that, the misogynistic, patriarchy, they're pissed that women are learning that they get to do what they want. Like the women don't have to get married when they're 22, and I don't know. The statistics are saying that like I don't know what 50% of men are living sexless lives right now because they just can't find a woman. But that type of logic that just doesn't just like the border. We need to shut down the border because we got all these Mexicans coming over our jobs. And then the next conversation is these people in this country don't want to work. The drive-in, the restaurant, there's closed down. They don't have enough people to open up the lobby. We need more people in this country who can work. And then, okay, do you want more people in this country to work, or do you want to shut off the borders to keep people from stealing all of our jobs? Where is it that you stand on this issue? I don't know, man.
It's kind of also like with Biden. Like when Biden ran for office last time, or for president last time, I like when they try to co-opt lefty talking points. That's always funny when they try to do stuff like that. And they'll say, well, Biden wrote the crime bill. And so that's how, he's best. Like, okay. Is Joe Biden too tough on crime, or is he a lawless Antifa thug? Like, well, which one is it? You cannot have it both ways. And they always try to. But as far as the border thing, where they say that no one wants to work anymore, and we need to block all these immigrants coming from taking the jobs. That when it gets down to it, I don't know if they've even thought this through, but a lot of them, like the smart ones, actually do have a solution with that. It's like, yeah, we want people to work the jobs. We just want certain people to work the jobs. Like we need to make sure that white people are having more and more kids to fill these. So we got to ban abortion and stuff like that, because the country can't get too spicy, if you know what I mean. Because then we're looking at societal collapse, and a lot of conservative views boil down to racism or bigotry. Like pretty much all of them every time.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I don't think. I think a lot of conservatives are unaware of their racism. Like,
yeah.
Like there's tons of racism out there. But a lot of conservatives, the way that they operate, the way that their brain works, they have no idea that is based on racism. And a lot of that just goes back to what you talked about how we're raised in school, and what the narrative is of how the only thing that you learn about, just little blips. All right, the Civil War ended, slavery ended, Jim Crow ended with the Civil Rights Movement, and you really never get into any real social impacts of any of those. Even in those time periods, you don't discuss.
Nope.
You don't discuss what day-to-day life was from 1866, after slavery is ended with the constitutional amendment, to 1964, when the Civil Rights Movement act is passed. The average person, particularly the average white person like me, had no idea until you start going to college and digging into it yourself, or being confronted by a professor who's doing their job in teaching what society social impacts these things had no idea what life was like for the average black person during those time periods. Oh well, they weren't allowed to live a certain place, had to drink out of this water fountain, but the day-to-day uh, interactions between the two races and what that looked like, nobody has any idea.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
they see racism as like an inconvenience. Like, oh, you couldn't use the same bathroom or something like that. And also, the reason they don't think they're racist is because this actually isn't their fault, because this is kind of what we're taught in American media and in American education system until you get a higher education, where some Trotskyist will brainwash you and tell you what racism is. But is that they'll say their definition of a racist is someone who attends Klan meetings, and anything below
yeah,
that is not racist. Like that's the way they see it. They're like, well, listen, I don't have any personal animus against people because of the color of their skin. And that's where it starts and stops for them. They don't think any further the fact that, oh, I'm supporting this policy that disproportionately affects people of color, therefore I'm making their lives more difficult. No, they don't think about it that way. They just think about the fact that, oh, I haven't burned a cross in my life, so I must not be a racist.
right. And I haven't. I don't use the N word like Papa
Yeah.
did. I mean, and Papa, even though he used the N word, he wasn't really racist.
He was a good old boy.
That's just talk back then.
Yeah. That's the unfortunate reality of it, that it's hard to get that message across, because in their mind, they are not actually being racist. They're not. They're like, they don't realize that the policies they support are actually, racist in that aspect. But I wanted to ask, like, in dealing with, speaking with Republicans, or I don't really do, like I said, I don't do a lot of general dialogue with conservatives online, because it's funny whenever they tag me in videos or stuff, or try to come at me and everything. It's like, hey, thanks for doing that, for drawing attention to my account, because I know a lot of conservatives are going to watch, and I know a lot of them do, and they hate watch, but they're listening, and I won't get all of them, but I will get some of them. I sure as hell am not watching their stuff, so it's only a win for me. But what made you start making content? How long have you been doing it? Like, what got you into this?
I really didn't start doing TikTok until I feel like Trump had just lost. Having a commission in the army, I was really like tiptoe around bad mouth. Just you never know. So
you never know. I got in trouble for that once.
Out the door. Once Trump was out the door, I'd been wanting to get on TikTok and kind of like talk some political stuff before, and I just started doing it then. And being the way that I, right now, still having a commission in the army, that, Biden's the commander in chief. So I don't really do much bad mouthing of Biden, even whenever I disagree with what he's doing on certain things. Like, I know there's a lot of, I've got some comments and messages from people, various creators or people who follow me, like, hey man, why aren't you talking more about Israel and what's going on there? It's just because I gotta be,
it's tricky. Yeah,
lightly on some of these issues. So I don't do that, because I mean, I have made content in the past that has got me called up on the red carpet and said, hey, talk about some stuff like this. So I gotta be really careful about that kind of thing. But I wanted to make content about Trump for a long time, and I just felt like I couldn't. And so once he was gone, I was like, heck yeah, I'm getting on TikTok.
Let's go, boy. Let's get it on. I got in trouble for that. I didn't get in trouble, but like you said, like, someone, your commander calls and said, hey, your social media, you're in uniform and stuff. I was like, okay, all right. So now that I'm out, that's another reason I have myself in uniform in my picture. Cause like, fuck, they can't do anything to me now. So I'm good to go. But, I never got in like deep trouble for it or anything. But, it's, I have respect for anyone who makes content. Like honestly, like literally anyone, no matter what kind it is. Even like the most right wing, insane, neo fascist out there. I do at least respect the fact that they have the courage to make
They
because
show
it's not easy.
they show their face. Like I have
Yes.
tons of respect for people who, like you said, as much as stupid as some of the stuff is that they say, at least they own it. Like the thing
Yes.
and is the I wish TikTok would become like a, hey, look, you got to have a profile picture and you got to post a video. We got to
I
be
agree. I agree.
able to confirm you're the real person. This is who you are, and from that point forward, you can comment and say whatever you want to. But all these little, I make my account the letter A, and I follow 6,000 people and do whatever. Like, no, man,
Yeah. It's you got a private account. Your username is like, long knives 1939 1066 1388 and some shit. And I'm looking at that and it's like, you fucking coward. And those ones when those ones talk about masculinity, I hop on them real quick because they're like, oh, listen, I'm a man, something you purport to be. And it's like you can't seem to muster up the courage to show your face and share your name whenever you're saying all this nonsense. And I love calling them out on that because what are you gonna say? Like what are you gonna say to that? It's like they like I said, it's like cosplaying for them of being masculine. It's like, well, I don't want people to hear my opinions. Well, then you don't have the courage of your convictions. Like if you're not bold enough to say what,
then you're a bitch.
You are. Yeah. It happens I don't know. Actually, I don't know how they can do that. Like I couldn't do that. I don't have like the mindset where I would just cowardly snipe these controversial opinions and not have anyone know who I was when I said it. Like I couldn't sleep at night with that kind of cowardice.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know. I would say I don't know what percentage of my followers are just kind of like trolls like that. But it's a big chunk.
Yeah.
People who, and what percentage of TikTok accounts are those type of accounts? I really wish they'd make some
TikTok. It's really bad with. So I shouldn't have been too surprised, but I was very surprised with the amount of racism on TikTok that I would run across. Like I was because I would see I imagine TikTok as like a younger platform and it wouldn't be quite, but man, there's quite a bit of it on there. Now the sexism is worse. The sexism is actually worse than the racism. So I have extra respect for female content creators, but I'm amazed. So it's not as bad as it used to be. Like last year, I would get videos taken down and my account suspended all the time. It doesn't happen that much. They changed the terms of service, like in September or something like that. So it's gotten a lot better. But still, I'll get the occasional flag, and then I'll see a comment from like an account called @race_realism or something, and just spouting the most, incendiary racist propaganda imaginable. Perfectly fine. TikTok and
no violation of guidelines.
No violation happens all the time. It's like, what is going on here? Like, what are the rules? And it's very bad.
Yeah. I had my first account completely permanently banned.
Oh, you did?
Oh yeah, my first account, I was up to about 250,000 followers.
Oh my God.
Got permanently banned, and it was just that kind of stuff that was just like, I think if you get mass reported, maybe it's gotten better because I only had like 30,000 followers at this point with my new account, but I don't get violated near as much. But on that first account, man, it was like a every couple days thing. Like I couldn't say anything remotely controversial. Or it would be, sometimes the violations wouldn't even tell you what the specific.
I hate that.
Violation for community guidelines, like, but yeah, like I would get. There was a period there for a while where like people get on there and just straight up death threat you, and that was cool. Like those accounts didn't get taken down. They didn't. It's just crazy, but
yeah, it's gotten better. It has got because. I was always on the edge of being banned. Like it would say your next violation will be the ban. And whenever that happened, fortunately, I do a lot of topics on my account. I'll do like, I do politics mostly, but I also do like history, science, comedy, poetry. Then I started telling a lot of jokes. Then I just started going straight into comedy and stuff, which actually worked better for me because those videos do very well and they bring in a lot more people. And but honestly, ever since the fall, like like I haven't had that problem nearly as much. But it is just sad when you see straight up Nazis and they are just right as rain, just posting whatever they want. But speaking of which, one last question I want to close out with you is I think I sent you the message is like, why are Republicans so weird? Like we know that we can track their like how the conservative movement has metastasized from the 90s to the absolute insanity they have now, because you got people like Carrie Lake and Doug Mastriano, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz. Like these are the most insane politicians I have ever seen. And listen, that is saying a lot. Like that is saying a lot. Like we lived through some wild days with conservative politicians, but they've gone so far crazy that the stuff that they say now would have been massive scandals just 5-6 years ago. Like like Charlie Kirk coming out and on Martin Luther King Day and just trashing. He's like, yeah, Martin Luther King's bad. Civil Rights Act is bad, and like just saying stuff that would have been like huge problems back then. But the Republicans have gone so far to the right now that you pretty much have to say this stuff, that's nonsense and insane just to be relevant. Like what's going on here?
Being from Kentucky, Mitch McConnell's always been a household name pretty much ever since I was like 4 or 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And Mitch McConnell was huge in making helping getting the Republican Party into this massive conservative party that it is. And he was kind of like a mastermind. This guy is a politician he was a politician that was on a level like nobody else, played the long game better than anybody.
He's great. Yeah.
But MAGA's destroyed him.
Yep.
Like the thing is that like the Republican Party and Mitch McConnell and specifically, they flirted with MAGA. They were willing to take the risk on MAGA and give Donald Trump the reins, thinking that they could control him, that he would be in their pocket, and really they've created a monster that at this point there's nobody who can slay this monster. Like it is beyond. It's went too far. The point of no return. We're way past it. There's no reeling this stuff in. So there's the level of insanity, right? Like the names that you talked about, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, Matt Gaetz's, and Carrie Lakes. These people are not just people that the right tolerate, that they look past their ignorance. These are people that they amplify. These are people that they say, hey, put Marjorie Taylor Greene in charge of something important. Like, this is who we want to see. Like, there's this group of people. Like, I mean, how big of the Republican Party is like your hardcore MAGAs? I think it's up for debate. Like you talked about, there's still some out there who are like, they want small government, they want Mitt Romney or whatever. But the overwhelming majority
yep,
are people who just want to be entertained by politics, be entertained by owning woke. That's it. Like nothing has to get done. I mean, we're 2 days away from the biggest bombshell of the fact that this impeachment inquiry and this whole Hunter Biden Burisma thing, that was all BS, and that guy's going to go to federal prison because it was all made up. And the Republican-run Congress spent what percentage of their time over the last 2 or 3 years focused on this lie? And it doesn't even matter. These people don't care. There's nobody on the right going like, oh my God, I can't believe it. All of our
no, could you imagine?
it's just on to the next thing. It's just on to the next conspiracy. And really it doesn't even matter that it wasn't true. Now it's just, that's just the swamp trying to arrest this guy who's telling the truth. Uh, why are they so weird? God dang! If we figure out the answer to that, maybe we could come
I-
up with the.
it's the so they have these agreements, and a lot of it, I talk a lot about how a lot of it is fueled by religiosity, by fundamentalist evangelical, because I grew up in that environment. And so once again, like they've like people like Rush Limbaugh and Jerry Falwell, they've convinced a solid 25-30% of the United States population that that one, Satan is real. Satan is an action. He's not a metaphorical representation of evil, or again, like an allegory for human malevolence. No, he is an actual living being with thoughts, wills, and desires. And for some reason he's chosen the Democratic Party as the tool through which he will, bring humanity to his knees. Republicans genuinely believe that is an actual the demon rats, the Democratic Party. And so, like, Satan is coming after your kids. He's trying to make them all trans. He's trying to, use communism. And so, if you believe that, if you actually believe that, is there anything you wouldn't do to stop Satan from stealing your child's soul? Like that's generally what it comes down to. So,
Yeah,
like, is the truth going to get in your way from destroying the prince of darkness? No, it's not. Like, it doesn't matter at all. So they it's spite-based politics. And this the entertainment thing you mentioned is such a great point, because Donald Trump, I give credit where credit's due. Donald Trump is a hell of an entertainer. He is amazing. He's just and liberals don't like to admit that Trump is funny. Trump is fucking funny. He not just unintentionally funny. The man has legitimate comedic chops. He has great timing. He reads a room like nobody's business. He's quick on his feet. He's amazing at producing quality, entertaining content, whether it makes any sense or not. And he was already a celebrity before he started to run. And when you watch interviews with in Trump crowds, a lot of them say, I never paid attention to politics at all until Donald Trump came along.
yeah,
Marjorie Taylor Greene's one of those people. She said that she'd never really paid attention to it. Then Trump came along and she's into it. She was inspired by him. She ran for office and now she's in Congress. And so it's like, oh, Trump's entertaining, so he must be cool, because if you're funny and you're entertaining, and this is what I say a lot about social media, is that a lot of people will probably follow you that don't like you, but the fact that you present things in an interesting or funny or thought-provoking way, they still keeps them on board. And that's why I try to use humor all the time, because humor is incredibly disarming. That if someone's saying something you don't disagree with, but they're making you laugh, you can't hate them all that much. And Trump makes a good usage of that. And so then Trump comes along, this guy who you like now because he's a rich celebrity, he's funny, and he's successful. The United States tells you the more money you have, the better person you are. So Trump must be a good person because he has a lot of money. And then he says the Democrats are evil. Now you hate the Democrats too. Like, how many times have you seen posters like, you don't see policies written for Trump? Build the wall. That might be the only one, but it's like Trump 2024, fuck your feelings. Vote for
yeah,
Trump, make liberals cry. It's all about spite, and that's all that motivates them now.
yeah, yeah. I think you're hitting the nail on the head. Is that it's really rooted in evangelicalism. And so if you've got people who, you know, you believe that God created humans, and he hates them all. Like he most of them to hell, because it's their fault, not his, that they're not perfect. If you believe in a talking donkey, if you believe in all these different little fables in the Bible, and you believe that all these 50, 60 something books are written by God, and what won't you believe? Right?
Yeah,
Like you got all these people who all this stuff makes perfect sense to them. What doesn't?
yeah, it's true. It's true.
These conspiracy theories are very much wrapped into the same type of inner workings of the brain as all the Old Testament Bible stories.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of it, like whenever you talk, like you don't see a lot of left wing flat earthers. Like you don't see that. Like it's you're not gonna run across that. It's always gonna be founded in some sort of religious fundamentalism. And this isn't to say that there aren't like most left wingers are Christians too, or most liberals are Christians too. So is that we understand that, but when you start going deep down the rabbit hole of conservative fundamentalism, you end up into some wild places because they just teach you that everything about reality isn't reality. It's just like a ruse that they are forcing upon you because they hate God. Like for some unknown reason, these people hate God, the creator of the universe. It's really funny to witness.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. But all right, man. Well, we're gonna wrap it up here. But thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. You want to give a plug to the good folks out there and where they can find your stuff?
Hey, I'm actually Superman Todd 2 now. So you can go follow me on Superman Todd 2, the Southern Liberal, and just I post some content from time to time. Some of it's good, some of it maybe not. But if anybody wants to follow me, that'd be great.
I enjoy it. And if my recommendation is worth anything, I think his content is fantastic. So I brought him on. But thank you, man. I really appreciate it and really appreciate your work.
All right, you too. Thank you very much.
Later. Bye.